I'm Petty Officer Liz Murray. The commander of U.S. and coalition troops in Afghanistan says Afghan troops are playing a much larger role in special operations in Afghanistan. Wednesday, General David Petraeus testified before the House Armed Services Committee.
In a typical 90-day period, in fact, precision operations by U.S. Special Mission Units and their Afghan partners alone kill or capture some 360 targeted insurgent leaders. Moreover, intelligence-driven operations are now coordinated with senior officers of the relevant Afghan ministries, and virtually all include highly trained Afghan soldiers or police, with some Afghan elements now in the lead on these operations, particularly in the Kabul area.
General Petraeus says he believes the improvements made by Afghan forces will allow the drawdown of U.S. surge forces this July and allow Afghan forces to take the lead by the end of 2014. All four branches of the services met their recruiting and retention goals for the month of February. The Army exceeded its goal. As for the reserve components, 4 of the 5 met or exceeded their goals. The Air National Guard came in just slightly under, meeting 99% of its goal. Still, DoD officials say all of the active duty services and reserve components are on target to meet their fiscal year retention and attrition goals. Just like Christmas and the 4th of July, the federal tax deadline comes up on the same date every year. The deadline for filing your federal income tax return is April 15th, except for this year. Here's Petty Officer Michael Wilkin with more.
In 2011, the deadline is Monday, April 18th. That's because Washington, D.C. is observing Emancipation Day on Friday, April 15th. Holidays in D.C., the federal city, impact the IRS the same way a federal holiday does. Tax centers have been set up for active duty military members to get advice or have their returns completed for free.
They're staffed by volunteers. The volunteers are trained and certified by the IRS to do returns for military members.
Military members don't have to pay taxes on allowances.
The most common advantage for military members is that we receive a housing allowance and a subsistence allowance that can be significant into the tens of thousands of dollars a year, and that's non-taxable.
Anyone who does, go to a tax center.
They should come with ID cards and Social Security cards and things to identify who they are and who their dependents are. I think the most common mistake is not having the right Social Security number for their dependents or themselves on their form.
Anyone who is deployed gets a 180-day extension from the filing deadline. Lieutenant Colonel Stone says everyone should get knowledgeable advice before filing their tax return. That's your news update. For more military news, head online to pentagonchannel.mil.
The military's battle against the bulge is setting a standard for the rest of the country. In a speech to leaders from around the country, the First Lady highlighted the DoD's effort to trim the fat, especially among recruits.
Now, when you think about the issues that are keeping 4-star generals up at night, childhood obesity is probably not one that comes to mind, right?
It may not be obvious, but the health of our children is indeed a military issue.
From the day we launched Let's Move, and that's our nationwide campaign to tackle this issue, high-ranking military leaders have been some of our strongest supporters.
First Lady Michelle Obama touted the military's push to end childhood obesity, even as she discussed her very own Let's Move initiative at the National League of Cities conference.
Military leaders realized, way before many of us, that obesity was affecting their core mission. They realized that it was driving up their cost, and then they decided to do something about it. And it's similar to what many of you are doing in cities and towns in this country as well.
She said nearly 27% of 17 to 19-year-olds are too overweight to serve in the military.
And for many who make the cut, years of inactivity and poor nutrition mean that they often are still overweight, and they're out of shape, and they're far more likely to injure themselves in basic training.
In January, Mrs. Obama took her message to Fort Jackson, South Carolina.
That's the largest facility in the country for training Army recruits. And I recently visited there and saw how they've started revamping their cafeterias to provide healthier choices for these recruits.
During that visit, she told me about the impressive measures being implemented at the installation.
In one kitchen facility, the general indicated that they had saved $600,000 because of using less grease.
The First Lady also highlighted steps the military is taking in educating new recruits, military families, and others about proper nutrition.
And coming up, we head downrange where U.S. troops continue their advise and assist role in Iraq. Stay with us.